have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Jim, second. Megan, any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Okay. I'd like to take a moment to have a moment of silence this evening to remember those affected by the events in Texas. On behalf of Shoreham-Wading River, we send our deepest condolences to those affected and all in the community. Next, we have our Superintendent's Report. Mr. Poole.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I have some great events to share this evening, but I'd like to start off again. I know it's been a couple of weeks since the budget vote, but I'd like to thank the community again for their ongoing support of our schools and importantly, our students in passing the budget. Also for their support in a couple of amazing capital projects related to redoing the art rooms and the auxiliary gym. I would also like to thank Tom Sheridan and Megan Teppenhart for signing up for another 3 years of volunteer work. It's fantastic to have them back, so I have to thank them as well. Over at the high school Tri-Am Music Honor Society visit just across the street the Shoreham AHRC and perform for the residents and staff just recently in the facility's outdoor courtyard. High school math students visited the Simon Center for Geometry and Physics at Stony Brook University. For the Della Pietra Lecture Series, they attended a special presentation by Dr. Vappa, a Hollis Professor of Mathematics and Natural Philosophy in the Physics Department at Harvard University. I continue to be impressed by our Students Against Destructive Decision-Making clubs here at the high school. They've continued to dedicate their time and talents to making and promoting positive choices. To be ready for the holiday weekend and summer months, they set up a table in the cafeteria for their Rock the Belt campaign, and the message was to be a smarty and wear your seatbelt while in a car. Approximately 200 people signed the pledge and were thanked with Smarty candy. A lot of special times for seniors, rightly so, this time of the school year. Fun music and games brought high school students together on May 20th to celebrate the successes of the spring athletic season. Out on the football field, teams were introduced as they ran onto the field to a lot of applause, and students participated in musical chairs, a 4x4 race, and other competitive and lively events. So some good fun held by high school students. Congratulations as well to all the band, choir, and high school orchestra students for their amazing performances last Wednesday night. Special thank you to all of the seniors who played in their final full ensemble performances that evening. And please come out, everyone, and support the select ensembles tomorrow night when the chamber orchestra at the high school, the jazz band, and Vocal Express perform at 7:30 in the high school auditorium. And finally, at the high school last week, the high school seniors did the annual graduation walk where the high school seniors visited all the other buildings, walked through the hallways, saw their old teachers, and cheered on other students for their future graduation success, and were cheered on by all of the other students in the district to celebrate their achievement for reaching the milestone of high school graduation. Over at the middle school, very, very proud to share that on May 20th, our grade 7th and 8th grade musicians performed at the Long Island Music Festival at Suffolk County Community College. They performed with strong musicality, presented themselves and their school with great professionalism, very attentive to their musical feedback, and in the end, this is pretty spectacular, the Prodell Middle School Band, chorus, and orchestra all received the top rating of Superior and were each awarded a gold trophy for their accomplishments, which will be displayed outside the middle school auditorium. Congratulations to the middle school ensembles. The middle school also had Wellness Week last week. It was a great success. Students participated in group exercises that were taught by various teachers and staff during gym periods, and they were served a healthy fruit smoothie, thank you, and courtesy of Brecky, during their lunch periods. The middle school chorus and quarter-tone students performed their spring concert on Tuesday, May 24th. Congrats to them to another wonderful concert put on by this talented group. The middle school chorus students also performed at the Long Island Ducks game last Friday, another great accomplishment for our middle school music students. Over at the middle school as well, our sixth graders went on their class field trip to Sunken Meadows State Park, where they're engaged in various outdoor activities such as orienteering, pond studies, and interpretive hiking. The annual grade level positive body image presentations, which are prepared and organized by middle school social worker Andrea Mons, were presented this week by the entire counseling team. I thank them for that. And I've been giving periodically updates at the middle school for Home and Careers. One of our goals has been to sort of uplift and revise that curriculum. So this is another pretty cool lesson. I'll thank Ms. Berg for sharing that. So Ms. Berg, in Home and Careers at the middle school, led students to research cuisines from various countries around the world. They noticed that all use some type of bread for a main source of carbohydrate. They prepared and baked bread from scratch from 5 different countries: Irish soda bread, French baguettes, Greek pita, Italian ciabatta, and Mexican corn tortillas. Students learned a lot about the ingredients and how they were similar and different and got different results. They also learned about the various ingredients that leaven bread and the cooking chemistry behind it. My only feedback on that unit for next year is to make sure I'm invited. Moving on to Wading River, and I'm very proud of our Wading River students and staff over there. Really been some great environmental stewardship going on over at the Wading River School. All of our 3rd and 4th graders received praying mantises once the chrysalis hatched last week, and they released them into our local community. Those chrysalis were gathered by a Shoreham-Wading River Science Research alumni who's now in college. About 90 healthy quail were transported to the Center for Environmental Education and Discovery so they could continue their growth to be released into the woodlands, the local woodlands, midsummer. I know Wading River is going to miss the quail. Over at Miller Avenue, I'm sorry, I'm still on Wading River. 2nd grade orientation was wonderful this past week. Students were greeted by the 5th grade band, had a full tour of the building, and enjoyed some warm pretzels as the Wading River Orchestra played for them in the Wading River Cafe. They had a fabulous field day over at Wading River, complete with a trick bike show and the Olympic torch. Special thanks to our physical education teachers who do a wonderful job with those programs every single year. I know that 5th graders are headed to Montauk Point for a tour of the lighthouse, Coast Guard Station, and Shadmore State Park, including lunch at Gosman's Dock and a tour of the fish market. That sounds like a wonderful day. The grade 4 state exams, science exams have finished up today, and we do continue our work with teacher learning walks, which are scheduled for Wading River next Thursday. Over at Wading River, another spectacular, amazing field day. Weather was perfect. Students joined in an interactive dance assembly and a variety of games by physical education teachers. It's always wonderful to see our children's families attend that wonderful event. A couple notes on sports. It's a great sports season. I believe at our next meeting, the Mark Passamonte, athletic director, will be here to share some of the accomplishments from the spring season. But this is pretty special. The Shoreham-Wading River varsity boys tennis team, for the first time in 36 years, won the Suffolk County Small School Championship. So congratulations to them. Both girls and boys lacrosse made it all the way to the county finals. Both played great games. Junior golfer Melanie Hagan, who was here presenting her history research project not too long ago, qualified for the New York State Championship in golf. She'll be traveling upstate to Wilton, New York, the weekend of June 4th and 5th to compete in the state tournament. And girls track had 2 county champions this year. Congratulations to Madison Zellen for being the champion in the 400 intermediate hurdles. And for the 4x800 relay, congratulations to Ellie Connell, Maddie McKiernan, Colin Ortman, and Emma Granshaw. They are the Class C champions for the 4x800 relay. So great work by them. And finally on the agenda, a few notes about the agenda. I'm really happy to announce that this evening on the agenda is the appointment of a facilities director for our school district, the appointment of Mr. Ernesto Rossini to the district's Director of Facilities 3 position, which is beginning on July 1st, is on the agenda this evening. We are excited to welcome Mr. Rossini to the district, who is here this evening, who will be replacing Mr. Andriotti, who we know is retiring. Mr. Rossini is an alumni of the Shoreham-Wading River School District and also a resident. He continues education at Stony Brook University with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and earned his MBA from Dowling College. He is currently a New York State professional engineer and an experienced Director of Facilities in another Suffolk County district. Prior to his current director position, Mr. Rossini was an assistant town engineer for the town of Riverhead, a distribution engineering manager for the Suffolk County Water Authority, and an assistant mechanical supervisor and assistant engineer for the Water Authority. Mr. Rossini formerly volunteered for the Wading River Fire Department from 2003 through 2012 and was the captain in 2010-11. We look forward to working with Mr. Rossini as he provides stellar leadership for the Facilities Department to continue to maintain and make improvements in the district's buildings and grounds. Additionally, on the agenda this evening, we have an update on the middle school 9-period day, and we have Mr. Van here this evening and Mr. Meinster. Mr. Meinster will be sharing planned building start and stop time schedules for the next school year. I will be presenting to the board a UPK update presenting an option for the board's consideration for an in-district UPK program, and Mr. Arcuri will be sharing an update on the timeline and design colors for the outdoor learning environment pavilions. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight, so I wanted to make a motion to move up resolution number 301 ahead of reports and reviews, since we have Mr. Rossini and his family here. Can I get a motion to amend the agenda? Tom, second Henry. All in favor? 6-0. Jump to it. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve 2021-22-301, the employment agreement for Director of Facilities 2 position? Tom, second Jim. Any discussion or questions?
No.
All in, yes?
Director of Facilities 3, right?
3, yes, thank you, Mike. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Congratulations and welcome, Mr. Rossini. So I don't believe we have any statements from residents. No. We'll jump straight to, we didn't give advance notice for opportunity for board members. Do you have something, Tom? Okay, go ahead.
So
Sure.
the technology committee met roughly 2 weeks ago, and Mr.
Mhm.
Meinster can add to this. Just a tidbit for the residents of the community. We're in the 4-year cycle on the Chromebook replacement. One thing I did take away that would be interesting is of the 600 of our Chromebooks that will be replaced, there's not really a specific, it's not by grade per se, so you may get notified that you need to turn in your device. Mr. Meinzer, you can add to this if you have any other feedback of what the timing would be for those. But so the rest of the students will keep theirs with them through the summer and continue to utilize them unless they're notified that their Chromebook is in need of replacement. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
And the timing is over the summer, so is it the end of year, students will be asked to turn their Chromebooks in?
Any Chromebooks that are at the end of life will be collected at the end of the school year, and then the students will be issued new Chromebooks to replace those.
Okay, great. That was the only tidbit of info. We just wanted
Thank
to
you,
share.
Tom. And
Yep.
that's a shift from previous years?
I'm sorry?
Is that a
Yeah.
shift?
I think so, because in the past, it sounds as if we tried to take the entire fleet back and do a
Right,
turn-in,
okay.
clean up, and turn
It's
back.
more, yeah, it's more of a transition.
Yeah.
As we expanded, absolutely, or for the pandemic, we collected all of the Chromebooks back so that we could inventory them and get them reassigned to start fresh with everybody now that we had the K-12.
Mhm.
Prior to that, we were still rolling it out actually up until that had happened, so students were holding on to theirs because those were the initial Chromebooks that they had.
Okay.
And now this would be the cycle going forward, as Tom just described it, would be that we will collect those Chromebooks that are end of life at the end of each year, and then replace those students with then, any student possessing an end of life Chromebook would then get that replaced with a new Chromebook.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Okay. So we'll shift now to reports and reviews. Mr. Meinster, goes to you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you. This evening, in just a moment, I'm going to be turning the mic over to Mr. Van, who is going to be providing an update on where we are at with our 9-period day initiative. This is work that has been going on through a committee that Mr. Van has been chairing for the last 2+ years. A lot of work and a lot of time and energy has gone into this process to craft a program that is going to best meet the needs of all of our students. And that would be what Mr. Van is going to be sharing on that. One of the things that's important to note before I do turn this over to Mr. Van is a connection that this does have to the district's strategic plan. One of our key goals from the district strategic plan is maintaining whole child programming, and we are accomplishing that in this particular facet with our new program here in the 9-period day at the middle school, by continuing to provide access to our students to career and technical education pathways and programs, supporting our district fine arts programs and expanding on those opportunities for our students, and exploring and developing strategies for expanding students' exposure to world languages and cultures. So without any further ado, I again want to thank Mr. Van for all of the work that he did in putting this program together and getting it ready, and he is going to share what that is with you right now.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be with you tonight to give a kind of an update and a recap on what we've been doing, obviously, for the past couple of years, and we've presented to you guys often on this. So this is kind of coming down to the closure now, where we're really excited to get going. So, you know, the schedule, the starting times have all been adjusted and adopted, and you can see them there, obviously, in front of you. We're going back to the traditional extra help in the mornings, Tuesday through Fridays, and then advisory will be in the beginning of the day, which is traditionally where it has been over the course of the past few years. This year was a little bit different due to a variety of circumstances, but we're looking forward to getting that back into place. Our lunch periods will be right in the middle of the day. We really haven't made a final decision on whether it's 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, but we will do that shortly in the next couple of weeks or so. So that's the start and end times for our school day. The big one, as we know, is all music ensembles will take place daily. They will take place within the school day. The lessons also will continue to be held within the school day. The ensemble groups will be scheduled for the same period, which is okay for, it works out well for kids who are doublers and or triplers, because they do meet every day, so you can rotate amongst the different ensembles and still get essentially the same amount of instruction you would have with the old model. So we're excited to work forward with that. The music teachers have been incredibly helpful, gave a lot of great input on the best way to kind of assemble that. So we're looking forward to that. And the big one is the ensemble meeting times are going to increase, from 120 minutes to 195 minutes per week. So, I mean, that's extremely exciting to me. We just talked about a couple minutes ago all the success that our ensembles have had on the Long Island Music Festival. So they're already, I think, at a very high level, and we set a very high standard for them, and they achieve consistently. So increasing the ensemble practice time, I think, is only going to push our program even more and more amongst the elite programs on the island. Extra help will still be available. They'll be available in the mornings from 7:40 to 8 p.m. The new schedule also allows for teachers to be available, most teachers to be available during lunch periods for extra help. There will be some challenges with that, and that's really just the teachers who teach multiple grade levels. If you're teaching a 7th and an 8th grade course, we'll look at innovative ways to do that. Maybe we would do break it up to half a year, where 1 half year would be 7th grade lunch, and the other half could be 8th grade lunch. So we're looking for some options. It doesn't affect too many teachers, but again, we still have the extra help available every Tuesday through Friday for 40 minutes each morning. So I think that was a really innovative way to maintain the extra help times that we were looking for, and that kids so often take advantage of. So students need an academic intervention or special education classes no longer have to choose or no longer have to be pulled out of a health class or a tech class or a home and careers class. So that was one of the driving forces when we looked at this program, at this model, is how can we best serve the needs of those students as well. So we're excited that those students will be able to really get access to the full programming, the full mandated programming from the middle school level. Accelerated classes as well. Students that are in accelerated science classes will have access now to technology. Oftentimes they're pushed out of that because of the lab component given to the accelerated science courses. So we're excited that those students will now have the opportunities to take technology or art or family and consumer sciences. So opening up more opportunities for students, which is really our driving force. Students not enrolled in the music ensemble, support services, or accelerated science will have opportunities to take the new electives that we were talking about and we've been developing with our teachers. So we're excited to offer those sections to the students. So in 6th grade, we will have, it's a geography-based class. Working title is Virtual Traveler. We're not sure if it's going to necessarily stay that way, but that's kind of the theme of the course. A STEAM course, which is going to be taught kind of a survey of science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So it's a kind of a survey course where kids will get dabble a little bit in each of those. 7th and 8th grade is architecture, agriculture, and digital music. Looking to leverage, obviously, the use of our greenhouse with the agriculture class for our 7th graders and maybe make a connection to the program up here, the Future Farmers of America program. So we see some good opportunities there as well. Digital music course, which is going to involve using Chromebooks and iPads and whatnot to create music. 8th grade journalism course, and then a more advanced computer programming course for the 8th graders as well. So we're very excited. Those are all kind of teacher driven, so our teachers have expertise in those areas. So those are the folks who really offered up their services and created these courses. So we kind of have some built-in experts where we're looking forward to giving them the opportunity to kind of run with it a little bit. So we're very excited about that. Those folks are being appointed actually at tonight's meeting for the curriculum writing projects that will be coming up where we'll develop a full program. But just a few highlights. So for the digital music, some of the items we'll be looking at as Foley artists, digital music production, and film scoring. The Foley artists, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. That's all the crazy sounds that they use to add in over movies. It's hard to explain, but when I was a kid, I was really interested in it, so I'm excited that they're actually going to be offering that. That's Mr. Vols is really a driving force in that program. Journalism, with a multimedia aspect, so podcasting, green screens, feature writing. Maybe we can leverage that into creating some students who will be involved in the school newspaper, certainly when they get to the high school, and we can look at some opportunities maybe in the middle school as well. The STEAM program is video game development, geometry, drone technology, geography, interactive map studies, regional analysis, cultural awareness. I think we could do there's a lot to be gained there through the geography course with some cultural awareness. Agriculture, as we mentioned, connections to the future farmers, the greenhouse, and computer programming is coding, Raspberry Pi, artificial intelligence project. So a variety of ideas that are coming out. And again, as I mentioned, those folks are going to be appointed tonight to do the curriculum writing so they can really, kind of hone in on what those programs are going to be. These are just some of the ideas that they kind of came up with in short order as far as items that may be covered during the course of those courses. And that's pretty much it. That's a recap, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So, Mr. Van, I see on one of the slides it says students not enrolled in the music ensemble, support service class, or accelerated science. What percentage do you think of the building would be able to take advantage of the new electives? Do you have an idea?
If I have to make a rough guess, I would say about 35, 40% of the students. We have a very large number of our students, which I think is wonderful, that are involved in the music program. And then filter out some of the students that get some services, so it drops off a little bit. So, my best guess is going to be about 35 or 40%. I'll know shortly, actually. So as soon as I finish with the running the master schedule, I can give you guys an update.
So it opens up a good deal of opportunities.
Yeah.
I guess I'm focused. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Van, support materials for some of these, do we already have that as
We
part of
have
our
some,
program?
yes, we have some, and when we were creating, we have wish lists for some of the courses. It's nothing out of the ordinary, so we're comfortable we'll be able to support the classes.
Okay. The one that caught my eye was drone technology, so I
Again,
assume we have some drones,
You know,
right?
the curriculum writing, they're being appointed tonight, so that's an idea that we have.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
we'd love to be able to follow through on it, we'll see.
And for parents, what are they to expect in terms of being able to choose an elective? Will there be further communication for them to?
Yeah,
to
so
provide?
there will definitely be further communication. We have the sixth grade orientation coming up. And what I'm thinking I'm going to do this summer, which has worked out well in the past, and I did something similar when we had the eighth grade trip, is I'm going to put together a presentation for folks, probably through a Google Meet or something of that nature, a live presentation. I'll record it, answer any questions that folks might have. I think that's the best way to kind of get the information out there to them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Just a quick question. I know a
Yep.
couple of years ago, we had a meeting at the middle school library, and there was a lot of opposition from some of the parents. I know we didn't do a lot of, communications or meetings with PTOs, PTAs, and parents this time around, but I know there were some concerns. Do we think we kind of tweaked this and got all those concerns that were heard that night into this program?
Yeah, I do. As I recall, the biggest, not I wouldn't say opposition, but concern that folks might have had was the extra help piece. So I think the innovative way that we kind of set this up with the extra help still being available 4 days a week, and additionally, the way the sort of contract is set up is with those that when you go for a 9-period day, you do have an extra help period built into your schedule. So to the greatest extent possible, which I think is going to be very good number of teachers will have that extra help period available during the lunch period. So that was the biggest concern. I think we did a good job addressing that.
Thanks.
This definitely has been a few years in the making, so I just want to thank you and the committee who led this work for your great extended efforts, and it's certainly exciting what this offers to students, especially that equitable access, and the fact that we could do it in a couple minutes later, because I know that was another concern, rather than an earlier time period is pretty cool too, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm very excited. It's what's best for students, I believe. So anytime we can work together to provide better, more access and equitable courses for the students, we're all for that. So thank you, and I appreciate all your support over the past couple of years as we worked on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Poole giving us a presentation on universal pre-K.
Okay, all right. Good evening, and happy to come here tonight to give the board an update on universal pre-kindergarten programming in our school district. It is hard to believe that just a little over a year ago, we didn't have any notion or knowledge of UPK funding or thought it would be coming, and here we are today talking about a potential year 2 and expansion of the universal pre-K program. Just thought I'd start off with a couple of photos of our current UPK students learning and playing at St. Anselm's. I do want to give a thank you to Sarah and Barbara at St. Anselm's for all their efforts and partnership and collaboration this school year as we embarked for the very first time on a UPK program. They've been great, and the program's been excellent for students this year. They've been wonderful partners. And before I get started, as I mentioned when I began, we've only known or been aware of receiving UPK funding in all for a little over a year. We found out in May that we would be having additional UPK funding, so it is time for some long-term UPK planning. Are we going to get more funding into the future? Will 23-24 include additional seats? Will we be able to find a permanent location for a consolidated UPK program Will funding continue into the future? Will it be enough funding? Will it need to be augmented, through other funding sources? Continue with vendors in district. So typically, we spend a lot of time planning to put something together, like the middle school 9-period day. But this money has fallen to us quickly, and now that we know, it seems like it's going to stay, and that it is. I do believe in the budget, in the law that was passed this year, that New York State is intending to further expand UPK funding for school districts. So there is a likelihood of increased seats for the 23-24 school year. So for sure, some long-term planning will need to happen over the next 6 months. Just a little UPK information, just a reminder, our allocation for UPK is $5,400 per student for a 5-hour full-time slot for 180 days per year. So for every student that meets that threshold, we would be funded fully for that student. In any event that, if you only have 10 students, look a little further down, enrolled in a program, we would receive $54,000 for those 10 students. So it's an equal funding per full-time seat. The allocation last year was for 32 students, and a reminder, this year the allocation was increased to 75 students for the 2022-23 school year. We are not able to charge parents or guardians any fees for being enrolled in a UPK program funded by New York State. And the 2022-23 expansion grants per the Office of Early Learning are intended to be available in 23-24 regardless of our usage this year, unless we're advised future action is taken by the New York State legislature. Just a note on maximizing funding opportunities. We certainly, as a district, have consistently looked to use any additional funding that has come our way. That includes the UPK funding we got last year. The funds certainly would provide an educational benefit to 75 students, and of course, a financial benefit for the 75 families who may otherwise be paying tuition for universal for pre-kindergarten. And since being notified of the increased UPK funding in May, well, actually we are still in May, the district's been exploring options for providing a home for those additional seats. So the first, this is just a brief, 2021 in April we were notified, the program was awarded St. Anselms. I'll move quickly through this. So upon receipt of that, very quickly the school district went out for proposals for an out-of-district vendor, similar to St. Anselms. Many school districts do go out for RFPs when one vendor cannot supply all the seats needed for all of their UPK-funded slots. So we went out, I believe we sent almost 25 RFPs out to pre-kindergarten providers within approximately half an hour of the Shoreham-Wading Central School District, and the district received one response. We are in competition with multiple districts that received the multiple increases in funding. It's not overly surprising. St. Anselms was able to provide us with 4 more seats, and that took us from the 32 to the 36. Universal pre-kindergarten classrooms have a couple of parameters for the setups. One is a threshold of 18 students per class with a teacher and a para support in that. So the classrooms at St. Anselms for this year had 16 and 16, but had the capacity to go to 18 and 18. So St. Anselms kindly, I was very happy to get the proposal, was able to supply 4 more seats at St. Anselms for next school year, and the board has subsequently awarded those 4 seats to St. Anselms for next year. So after that, not having a lot of luck with out-of-district placements, the district pursued an in-district opportunity, an in-district UPK program, meaning that the district would have to identify classrooms, 2 classrooms, and the vendor would provide the staffing, the training, the curriculum, the supplies, the materials, the oversight. The district provides the classrooms, and a vendor would provide all of the other services. So after review of the proposals, again, that we sent those out to approximately 15 vendors and providers, the ones that responded initially to the out-of-district program, and after review from a scoring committee, Scope was identified as a potential partner for our school district to provide universal pre-kindergarten programming in one of our buildings. Scope has and is successfully providing in-district universal pre-kindergarten programming in over 25 Long Island school districts. And glad to share as well, you may recall for St. Anselm's, the cost per student is slightly over the grant-funded amount of $5,400, and we're fortunate to have the federal grant funds for 2 or 3 years, and we've supplemented the New York State UPK grant with some of those federal dollars to maximize that grant funding. Scope fees do not require the district to supplement funding. Their fees are exactly $5,400 per student, which again is the equivalent of our per student grant allocation. Scope and district responsibilities. So in this model of an inter-district program, I think I shared some of this already. Scope provides required staff for 2 classrooms. In this case, it would be a teacher, a teaching aide, and another para. So it would be 3 adults per classroom in this model. All instruction and screenings, substitute teachers and TAs as needed, curriculum, supplies, materials, center materials, program oversight. There's a field supervisor that will visit and manage the program and handle issues as they arise across the school year. The universal pre-kindergarten staff in each of those rooms are provided with a cell phone so that they may have direct parental communication and not necessarily have to go through the building's main office, go right to the teachers, go right to the field supervisor. They provide professional development and staff supports and snacks. The district provides 2 rooms and furniture, so meaning tables and chairs, a teacher workstation, that's our requirement, access to the playground. The 40 students in a building will need to have access to the nurse as needed. We would provide lunch as we do for K through 12 students, for economically disadvantaged students as needed, and we would provide the funding through the state to Scope at a value of $5,400 per student. I will add in there that additionally, likely the building, the cleaning and maintenance of those 2 rooms, that will be handled by district staff as well. The UPK classrooms, of course, will fall under the umbrella of our health and safety and security measures, so they'll take part in drills. We'll know who they are. Certainly, that part of it, we will manage to keep anybody that's inside of our building safe. So those are the distinctions between the district and the Scope responsibilities.
Chair, I'm sorry, just one
Yeah.
question while you on the responsibilities. What additional responsibility would our administrator of the building have? Oversight, parent complaints, issues, would they be adding to some of their workload?
I think parent complaints would head to the program supervisor in general of the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program, or head to central office. So right now, those types of things are funneling through central office, through Mr. Meinster's office, when they do come up. So, but I do expect that at the building level, we will maintain a single point of access for the building. So if somebody forgot their lunch, or there's a coat or mittens or something like that, that would funnel through the main office to the UPK classrooms. But other than that, the big ticket items that, let's say somebody has a concern about some curriculum or instruction, that would not go through the main office of the building. That would be off of their plates. Okay, so now the big reveal, the Wading River option for UPK programming. So just a couple of notes. There are no open rooms at Miller Avenue in 2022-23 for a UPK program. And we all may recall that back when we presented the budget, we presented with 6 kindergarten sections and made a note that we may need a 7th if enrollment continues to grow. So enrollment has continued to grow, and we have to add a 7th kindergarten section to the Miller Avenue School to keep our class sizes around 20. I'll give you an exact number right now, but somewhere 20 or perhaps right now a little bit lower. I believe there are 131 enrolled right now in kindergarten. So at this time, there is no room at Miller Avenue. I'll just make a brief note that this does mean at Miller Avenue, this is a sort of a sidebar, that does mean that music at Miller Avenue is not going to have a dedicated classroom next year. They will have some time in the library when library is not scheduled. They'll make use of the AP room when that's available. They'll make use of the learning pavilion when that is completed outside, and then there'll be some time when they're on a cart. So there'll be some flexibility. I know the principal and the teachers are working on a model that provides the greatest amount of consistency, but also it requires some flexibility, so I'm confident that they'll have a plan for that. So no room at Miller Avenue. In fact, we can't add a section at Miller Avenue right now. There is no place to, unless we went back to using the AP room, but right now in a traditional model at Miller Avenue, and class sizes, not to scare, the class sizes are where we projected them to be back in, a couple of months ago, so that hasn't changed. But if we have a dramatic jump, in Miller Avenue, if 20 students enroll at a grade level, there's not an extra classroom readily available, other than going to a COVID model, split the library in half, use the AP room, something like that. But I don't expect that to happen. So the UPK program cannot be held at Miller Avenue. I think one of the goals in looking for where could UPK land was where could it land, how can we maximize the funding, knowing that we need long-range planning into the future, how do we deliver for families and students this year, but at the same time, not impact other programs that are running really well in other buildings, especially since, yes, we've been largely back to normal, but especially since we are still coming off of a couple of tough years. So programming and regular availability was really important. So we looked around the school district. Wading River for next year is currently projected to have, I'll say, 4 classrooms to be determined. So if we use 2 of those 4 to be determined classrooms, and have a map on the next slide, that would leave us 2 rooms that could potentially be used for any grade level enrollment increase over the summer, or from my experience, when there are open rooms in a building, they tend to get full use. So the building will have some plans to make an effective use of those rooms if they're not occupied by classes for the next year. So to recap, there are 4 rooms available at Wading River with a TBD label on them, and 2 of them are a potential option for a universal pre-kindergarten in the school district.
Jerry, just, sorry to interrupt you again.
No, I stop anytime with questions.
I know you skipped over Briarcliff. I just wanted you to maybe just
Yes,
touch
yeah.
on that, just so people at home can hear you talk
Yes,
about why that was an option. And before this gets uploaded to the district, people can, read it at home. Were you going to change it to 4 available instead of 2?
Well, the next slide says that,
Okay.
that
All right,
there's
thank you.
4 in there.
That's
But
fine.
thank you, I did want to talk about Briarcliff. So Briarcliff is really cost prohibitive. As we know, the UPK grant is $5,400 per student. Using our current teacher's contract, we would not be able to, and contractual, we would not be able to afford just the classroom instruction, let alone custodians, a psychologist, a nurse, a building administrator, grounds. So it's not just the individual classrooms at Briarcliff, it is 5 to 6 additional positions at Briarcliff beyond what's required for the classroom that there is no funding for it. I recall, don't hold me to this number, but I do recall when I arrived, before I arrived in the school district, which is 5 years already, but before that, there was some really in-depth concerns. Look at UPK, and tell me if I'm wrong, Alan or Glenn, it was around $1.5 million to open Briarcliff with full staffing, from top to bottom, to have a full running building in there. I don't know if that number still holds up, what the volume would be on that. So that is additionally, and I don't have the details for this, the Briarcliff building, if it is a separate UPK, a separate UPK and not part of a K-12 building, falls under the Office of Family and Children's Services for their code. So I had a conversation with a vendor about using Briarcliff, and they were not interested, as the code requirements are different from K through 12. So I don't know what that work would be. I don't know if that's really relevant. The main point to this is that staffing costs would far exceed the grant dollars that we have, and we'd have to make a conscious decision to add whatever the difference is between the state grant to the full funding capacities for the building. We'd have to put that into the general fund and ask the community to fund that. So certainly when we do the long-range planning over the summer and fall, it definitely should come up on the table, and we should hear from families what they think about that, whether that's something that the community is interested in or not. But for this year, it's definitely not in the budget and cost prohibitive.
Just, if Scope ran all the classrooms, or if they ran both St. Anselm's and the additional ones that we received this year, the positions that would be required at Briarcliff that we would have to provide would be an administrator and a nurse?
Administrator, nurse, custodian, probably 1.5. It's probably a nurse, administrator, 1.5 custodians, maybe 0.5 groundsmen, and perhaps 1 to 2 security guards in the building. So all of those costs with
You know, it's a
benefits.
good topic for the future.
I think
looking down
so.
the road, but just,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, we just walked through it. It's turnkey, right? The building looks great, yeah.
Mr. Poole, in this map, do you have identified all the tier 3 locations and OT, PT, they're already assigned?
So I have the, just last but not least, the class size. Those are the same numbers that I shared a couple
Okay.
months ago.
Thank you.
For that, just for anybody listening. Those haven't changed in the school district, so that was presented a couple of months back for us. So I'm sure some of the finer, Ms. Teppenhart, some of the finer changes to the building may be being finalized, but in general, that is a good representation of what's possible for next year. If you look on the map, and anybody at home looking on the map, you will see 2 rooms labeled TBD, room 103, room 216. I want to thank Mr. Parinello for working on this maybe a little earlier than normal and sharing it with us, but many thanks, Mr. Parinello. And then you look over to the right, you'll see 2 additional rooms that are not holding classrooms right now. That could potentially be an option for in-district UPK, would be UPK 1 and UPK 2. I know, I'm sorry, Megan, you were asking about OT, PT?
Yeah, any additional locations outside of a classroom, so tier 3 locations for pull-out programs, things like that. It's all identified on the map already?
Yeah, I think I do see in finer print to the right of the stage, OT, PT. However, if that did not meet the needs and class enrollment just kind of stayed flat, basically, room 103 or room 216 could become that space as well.
Okay, thank you.
So, we'll share a little bit more about the location. So I know that's an old bond picture where you don't see any grass growing on there. However, it shows the location of it. It would be right at that, right at the loop over there. Important to note that UPK students will have a 5-hour day, so that means that they won't arrive at the same time as grades 3 through 5 students. They will come 20 to 30 minutes later, and they will leave 20 to 30 minutes later. So plan would be to have them come after opening and leave before regular dismissal for them. So there is a spot there for parents to pull in, park, drop the students off. If you know that part of the building, there is a separate entranceway with a foyer. It's on that enlarged part of the map that says UPK 1 and 2. You can see the doors there. There is a foyer there with a door to the right and a door to the left to 2 wonderful classrooms. We certainly have plenty of furniture that we already have to outfit those rooms. And then while the UPK program students could potentially go a couple doors down the hallway to use the current bathrooms, those 2 closets in those 2 potential rooms do have the plumbing in them for to replace a toilet or a sink. Those were taken out a while back and converted to a closet, but that is something that our district team could do to convert them back to bathrooms. Maybe not a bad idea. It's never a bad thing to have extra classrooms with bathrooms, UPK did not continue to the future, those are certainly great locations for special education classrooms because the bathrooms are going to be in them and functioning. So investment for UPK, but also getting those fixtures back in there, investment for the future. So that's the location. So this will not put art on a card. It's not going to put music on a card. It's not going to put library on a card. It should have a very minimal impact on operations at Wading River. Of course, we're stepping our toes into having an in-district vendor-based UPK program in one of our buildings. I'm sure we don't know everything today that we will know this time next year about running that program, but the expectation is that minimal impact. I think the challenge will be to have Mr. Parinello leave those kids in their classrooms and have them attending other wonderful events that happen at Wading River. But
Just a few questions with the location. So are you envisioning parents walking their kids in every day and parking and to pick them up, or use the whole kiss and drop?
Kiss and drop.
Okay.
There are 6 staff there for 40 children, so there's plenty of staffing that should be there to get the children.
So the scope staff will come outside and?
Yes.
Okay.
You
And
s-
then-
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Mike.
And then the other question was, what does the additional security look like as far as, do we have to have someone be posted outside for that time that they would normally be inside, or?
No, we have somebody posted outdoors on the perimeter, largely for the large part of the school day, eyes on the perimeter. So generally, somebody is in that vicinity, sort of looking at the opening and entrance to the school. They do have some rotations and other door checking responsibilities, but generally they are there. And so adding an additional security guard should not be required. We certainly will take the time to train all of their staff in what we expect for safety and security in our district. So that'll be a requirement for us, but we should not have to add.
Yeah. I'm assuming they would take part in all our fire drills?
They would take part in all of that. They'll have the ID badges. They will, all of the safety protocols and trainings would be required from us.
Regarding the 5-hour day, can you speak to, do we have a schedule yet for the start and end time? And
Not finalized yet. I don't want to say it's going to be 20 minutes later or 30 or 25. You know, Mr. Meister is going to present fully in a few minutes about all of the start and stop times across the district next year as it relates to the settlement of the SWERDA contract and the additional minutes. We implemented them partially this year, but what that looks like for next year. But I do expect somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes later in the day. Typically, our elementary students have a 6-hour day. These children will have a 5-hour day, so something around 30 minutes.
maybe we can have our STEAM elective students for next year do a field trip and give you new drone footage.
Yes, I like that. I like that idea. Yes, I think so for that. So additionally, you know, many districts, larger districts, do partner with more than one UPK provider because they don't have room inside their buildings, and the outside vendors can't house all of them. So both of these UPK programs are aligned to the New York State Learning Standards for UPK. However, the curriculum and instruction delivery may vary in some instances, not certain, but it may vary. We do have access to both curriculums, so some of the work we can do is to see where things can align more. But they both follow closely to the New York State standards. So the outcomes for students, while the approach may be slightly different between the two programs, will certainly be aligned to what the outcomes are that we expect. Both programs are greatly experienced and have a seasoned curriculum. Should we move forward with an in-district UPK program at Wading River, the 75 UPK lottery awardees will be contacted in numerical lottery order to allow them to provide their preferred setting and to confirm their interest in the program. Last year, we had a number of lottery winners drop out over time, so we'll call, confirm their interest, and ask them what setting they prefer. The district, however, we will not guarantee that setting. There are some variables that come into play, one being twins, and a few items like that. But I suspect largely in the order that they select them, parents would have their request honored, but I just don't want to guarantee it for, even just for that one factor of twins.
Do you recall, can you remind me the number of entrants we had into that lottery?
I believe, Alan, do you remember? 87.
Okay.
87. So last year we had 77, 32 seats, and Alan, we got as far as 48 on the list. How far did we get? Ms. Bevers doubles as our UPK support.
What, in the 40s for what? What do you?
By the time when we had to replace people as they rolled out.
Oh, yes, yeah. It was about, I believe it was about 43.
So we got to 43. From 32 selected, we ended up, across the year, getting to number 43 on the list. So, and that is the, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is the
Mr. Poole, what was that number again for the number of entrants for this year?
88.
88. And so, if we were to consider Wading River, where would we cap class size? 22?
Class size in the UPK program
Yes.
would be capped at, it's capped at, well, the caps are set by New York State, so you're capped at 18 if you have one teacher and one para. You're capped at 20 if you have a teacher and 2 paras. Scope is providing a teacher and 2 paras, so those classrooms have an up to amount of 20.
Okay, so we would potentially be looking at 35 students in it outside the district program for UPK. Have we confirmed with those partnerships if they can accommodate those number of students?
St. Anselm's can take the students that they've committed to, and Scope is able to provide the staffing to provide that, to provide those classrooms and the required staffing for them.
Do you mean, Jim, the remaining students in the lottery, are they going to have a place to go within the community? I don't think there's a way for us to really know that.
I do know that St. Anselm's does have seats for at large, and I know that, I'm not speaking out of turn, Barbara or Sarah, but I know they're hoping in the future to have expand their program in some way, shape, or form to have room for more children, just not ready yet this year. I know some of our students end up at other local UPK programs at the parents' expense and parents' selection. I think generally, the last time I looked at this number with Mrs. Smith at Miller Avenue, we were able to confirm that about 90% of district students were enrolled in a UPK program. And I haven't looked at this in a couple of years, but the last time we looked at it, about 90% of UPK students enroll, or kindergarten students enroll in UPK prior to entering kindergarten.
It is a really good point, though, given the current climate and how the funding has impacted all the local districts. I wonder if there's a way for us to communicate with the remaining families and continue that conversation just to track if they've ended up being pushed out of a program, if they've been able to access a program, if they want to,
Well, that's a good thought, and certainly one we could follow up on. We do have the email addresses for those families and their contact information and some basic registration information for that. In fact, that was very helpful this year when we were doing kindergarten registration to look at the list that didn't get into the UPK program, right, up to 77. And if they hadn't registered, reach out and say, hey, you didn't register, we know you have a child coming in. So it's very helpful to have that list in advance to get early registration, but reaching out to them to see how they're faring is a good thought, and we'll take
Mr.
that
Poole,
on.
are we saying that if we're capped at 20 per classroom in district, that only 40 of the potential 87 that have expressed interest would get a seat?
No.
So, no, we would have a combined total of the grant value. So we have 75 UPK seats. So we would have a total of 75 students together with a portion at St. Anselm's and a portion in district.
Yeah, but if my memory serves, I think we had to subsidize a portion of that at St. Anselm's.
We did
as a tuition.
you're right about that. At
Yeah.
St. Anselm's, the cost per student did require us to use a portion of the federal ARP ESSA CARISA funding of the 2.4 million. We had to use a portion to supplement that cost at St. Anselm's this year, and we'll need to do so next year. For the students at Wading River, the fee charged by scope will be equivalent to what the state awards, so that we will not have to supplement the 40 seats at Wading River.
Okay, so one last question. So fiscally, I mean, would it make sense to consider the fact that we have potentially 4 open classrooms at Wading River next year to expand past the 2 open classrooms that we were designated for UPK and potentially consider a third or even all 4, being that there's going to be no impact on enrollment with the other grades that are in the building?
I think that is something that we considered, but the thought was, as it's the first time we're doing it's a pilot program, having 2 classrooms over there, and then leaving 2 rooms open in the event something happened with enrollment over the summer, so that we had that flexibility, and then couple that with, hey, let's do the long-term planning, let's see what the space is at Wading River into the future, or Miller Avenue. So did consider that move. It is a fiscally conscious move because we would save that supplemental funding, which is around $1,400 per student or so, additionally through the federal grants. But the thought better of it, considering the building and leaving some space available for the building rather than going all in on year 1.
We're looking forward to a in-depth analysis of the program at St. Anselm's from Mr. Meinster at the end of the year to inform some of that long-range planning, to help inform the community, inform administration and the board regarding the benefits of that program, how our students fared, and you raised some questions in this update regarding the long-term planning. Do we have any idea in terms of beyond that presentation of the backward analysis, what are the other next steps for the community? What should we be looking for in terms of answering some of those questions and how to plan for the future?
Yeah, I think it's going to center on 2 questions, which is space and funding. So if we're going to continue to receive increases in UPK funding, and one can imagine too that over time, how long can a scope hold their costs, or how long can a St. Anselm's even hold their current costs for that? So some of the considerations will be funding through the general fund into the future. Some considerations would be, Briarcliff, we discussed a little bit today, willing to pay for that. Certainly there's room for expansions at Miller Avenue. Is that something that the community would want to do to support UPK? Those are all questions that I don't have the answer for right now, but it's going to come down to where could that space be, and what would the funding be to support universal pre-kindergarten in the school district moving forward into the future. That's definitely some work to do. It's hard to think that in 23-24 we would have any additional facilities available in the school district. Perhaps, as Mr. Smith noted, perhaps those 4 rooms in 23-24 are available. We found that this year went very smoothly. There's no enrollment, and that, you know what, we could use 4 rooms over there. But we could be in a position where we have funding for 75 this year. We could find out in May of next year that we have funding for 115, which would then max out the 4 rooms at Wading River, and then have us really to think hard, force us to keep an outside vendor for the program as well. So still a little bit of unknown, but.
Mr. Poole, when it comes to this funding, has there been any, I guess, feedback given as they're increasing the funding amounts for increase the number of students, that there is additional support, as we talked about, that is required to obviously, educate the students, maintain buildings? You're talking about space, which is a constant issue. When you're talking about safety and other things that come into that. Has there been any advocacy for part of that funding? If you're going to increase it, that's great, but there has to be an administrative, element to it, or a grounds element to it, or a spacing element to it. Has there been any feedback on that?
We are, and you're certainly right about that. I have no indication that our dollar value of $5,400 per student will change. That is grounded in a 2006 sort of algorithm. I have not seen that grow in other districts. By the way, we are at the lowest tier for, you can't get any lower than $5,400 per student in New York. So we are at the lowest tier of funding for UPK in New York State. So there's a variety of their algorithm there. The only thing that is probably likely for next year, as I read the full text of the law last week, was that it seems their intent on enhancing it further in 23-24, thereby creating more of a space issue, and then the districts wanting to maximize the funding in support of their community and in supporting of education, but being stuck between, we may not have all that space, outside vendors don't have all, I mean, we mailed out 23, almost 25 RFPs to local providers and got one response.
Yeah.
If they had room,
So it's probably because of the cost.
it could be.
There's not enough funding. So if you're saying, Jerry, that 5,400 is what they gave, and we put up 1,500 to send them to a private entity, so they're already 1,500 underfunded, almost 30%.
Probably more, I think all of
It's
us.
a low number.
Right, I'm
Probably
saying
more,
more, I'm
right?
saying
At least
absolutely
that,
more.
right? For
So-
UPK is probably $10,000. I think the tuition rates on web pages is probably $10,000 to $12,000 a year for
Right.
free kindergarten, right? So
So, yeah,
yes,
think
it
about,
definitely is.
think about what does it cost us to educate a child? Almost 24,000, correct? So I almost think that we're all naive to the fact that if we take on this program, Mr. Poole, you said just open up Briarcliff and administrate it, provide nursing, which we just hired another nurse luckily, right? This budget just got approved. So you would be probably burdening the taxpayer with another $1.5 million of expense to take on a UPK program, is ultimately what we're looking at. Aren't we all just, isn't that correct?
I mean, it can't be 1.5. It was 1.5 last 5 years ago when
Sure,
we
it's
were
more.
paying for the teachers.
I'm not recommending, don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending Briarcliff or that. I think fiscal challenges.
But we
are-
need the space. You just said that Miller Avenue is full, and we're down to 4, maybe 2 classrooms at Wading River. So we really don't have the space. And then Ms. Teppenhart asked a really good question. I don't know at what level, when does a 4-year-old start requiring services or needing space within our buildings for those OT, PT, other services that they require? I don't know that answer. Does a 4-year-old require that, and does the school have to provide it? I don't know
We
that
already
answer.
do.
For 3 and 4-year-olds, that is funded by the county. That is through the Cpsc process. We are already providing a Cpsc oversight as required by law in the school district, but we are reimbursed for services and costs. I expect that would continue where services are not held in district. To some degree, it may be easier on our Cpsc staff if those students are in district, right? If there's some students that need a CSE meeting or something like that, that could be less travel, I'm thinking. But you know, what I present here tonight is an option for
Right.
maximizing the funding for this year. There are plenty of challenges moving into the future, things that would prevent us from doing it again in future years, and things that maybe happen that we don't know about for funding into the future. So our enrollment seems to have settled in
I agree.
somewhere around 125 to 135 per grade level. I'm sure we'll have some outlier years, but that seems to be where we're settling in at. So it's hard to know, and you're right. If we get just $5,400 and they're telling us that that's for 120 kids, then we've really hit a wall on unless look, it could also be, I'm going to hope that outside vendors recognize the funding increases on the island and start to
Demand.
offer some additional seats. And the other avenue too for UPK should be some advocacy. So as opposed to giving us an allotment of $5,400 per student, give us the allotment and let us maximize the funding to the best degree that we can. All of the strings attached with the funding, you can't offer a half day, it's only full day. If we could offer a half day, we'd capture everybody that wanted UPK, right? If the funding was simply able to be half day, take the full amount and provide a half day program, we could cover anybody that wanted a half day UPK program in the school district to the benefit of families and students. So That is definitely some advocacy. The state has multiple threads of UPK funding and requirements and parameters, asking the state to pull back, think carefully about how they're funding it, and then provide districts flexibility to maximize the funding with rates are different on the island than they are elsewhere, all of those things. But flexibility in the final funding dollar amount would allow us to, provide UPK in a lottery-based program, but at the same time, not have to supplement it. So a lot of different areas to pursue. But my job is to give the
Yep,
board
no, absolutely.
options, so I'm presenting one. We struck out on out-of-district for the additional funding, but we do have an option for 1 year, and I'll say that, we have an option for 1 year to pilot those 2 classrooms at Wading River.
I think that's a good point, Mr. Poole. It's 1 year that we're looking at, and the future is unknown, so.
I'm really appreciative of this, what you've put together here, for a couple of reasons. And one is to provide our taxpayers who have preschoolers with an incredible value and an incredible savings. Scope provides great value, as we can see here. Certainly our program has been, from what we can see so far, successful at St. Anselm's, but the fact that we can offer this without any additional funding from our budget is exciting. The other item that has become apparent is just that there aren't enough seats available for districts to capture in out-of-district preschools throughout Long Island, and this funding, while overall a good thing, has posed restraints and constraints and issues with access. So if we're in a position to offer that access with no additional cost to the taxpayer, then it feels obligatory at this point to provide it. Certainly, though, we do have a lot of work to be done for long-term strategic planning on this one, with some variables that are unknowns and yet to be seen, and opportunities, as you said, for advocacy. So thank you for putting this together, and thank you to Mr. Parinello for being willing to take on this program. And I think the recommendation, from what I can see, is overall a very good thing for our youngest learners.
Oh, thank you. I will add, as we're talking here tonight, that for next year, in October, we will go out to RFP knowing that we have those, knowing what the funding level is for 75 seats, and projecting that maybe we get additional seats. We'll go out to RFP with outside vendors very early in the school year for 100 seats and see what comes back to the school district. Yeah.
Okay.
Just have one more question. I was looking at the floor plan of the building. Well, 2 questions. I would assume if we didn't have UPK next year, we would find some use for those rooms, for all 4 of them, right?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I did notice that grade 3 has its own faculty room, but there's nothing identified for grade 4 or 5. Is that something that we would
That may
potentially
be,
use TBDs, or do they share a room?
that may be a typo. There's generally one faculty room.
Oh, it's
so-
one faculty room?
Yeah, yep, it'd be one faculty
Oh,
room
okay.
for it. So
All
it
right.
could be a typo on there.
And, I mean, again, speculating, did we have something earmarked for these 4 rooms in the event UPK wasn't an option?
For the 4 rooms,
Yeah.
I'm sure the use of, like I said, OTPT might go into one of those rooms, move to a larger location. Generally, OTPT is 1 or 2 kids, so may not necessarily need it, but it might be a nicer space. It could be an additional staff room, a staff resource library for that. Could be a space for additional testing for students that miss testing. So there's definitely some options for those space, and I have no question the rooms will be filled up with some productive use for the building.
All these rooms are being used this year under the COVID model? Right?
Yes, every
That's
space is being used in both buildings.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Arcuri presenting outdoor learning environments update.
Sail shades.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to provide you a quick update on the outdoor learning environments. The 4 outdoor environments are being totally funded by the federal grant CRESA-ESSA. State Education Department approval has been in place, so all 4 building plans have been approved by the State Education Department, so the building permits are in hand. Contractors are in place to complete the work. We have awarded contract for the high school project to a single site contractor, and we have awarded a contract for the middle school, the Wading River School, and the Miller Avenue School to another site contractor. As far as the work, we are going to be completing it in phases. That's being driven by 2 different reasons. First and foremost, there is a long lead time for a lot of the items. The items that are such as the pavilions themselves, the outdoor furniture for the spaces. There is somewhere up to a 6 to 7 month lead time, whether it's a supply chain disruption, whether it is a materials issue. I cannot exactly tell you what it is. I could tell you that we've placed our orders, and we are going to be readying the sites at all 4 locations and have the sites ready for students who are able to use those spaces without the final pavilions mounted on them, without the final furniture. But as it comes in, we are going to continually have the items installed. We're very confident that we can do work when school is in session. So it isn't like if the pavilions arrive in October, do I have to wait to a break to actually install it? The answer is no. We are able to perform a lot of the work when school is in session once the main site work has been finished. Just to go back, the actual areas where the pavilions were going to be located were presented back in June. The pavilion at Miller Avenue is going to be a little bit east of the library area. That a star should have been over a little bit more. I don't know how that occurred, and I do apologize for that. This picture here depicts it a little bit clearer. Sure.
Mr. Arcuri, can you actually, I had a concern about that location actually. Can you point to where it's supposed to be?
Yeah. And I could show
Okay.
it to you on this particular picture here. Now I understood where the question came from. Something must have happened when I converted to a presentation, whether I stretched the picture and the star did not go with it. But it is
Okay.
located a lot further south than where that star is currently located. So it isn't
So
on-
adjacent to the patio area somewhat?
If you look at this picture here, that is up behind you. Our fence line is over here. So our storage sheds are next to a little bit off of the container south, and the actual pavilion is much further south. So it's nowhere
Okay.
near the property line or the tree line.
Thank you.
One of the ideas about picking this location was to tie it in with the existing outside learning area that is outside of the library space. So, as I had mentioned in October, when representatives of BVS Architects have also presented this, we plan on doing the initial phase in putting in the pavilion pad, putting in the walkways, putting in the cement pad, the storage sheds, putting up the pavilion. That's our phase one for this area. Future enhancements to the area could be future sail shades over the existing tables outside the library space, future landscaping gardens, future pollinating garden, natural elements, etc. So the first phase, we anticipate will be completely finished by the end of November, assuming there aren't any additional supply chain delays. The colors picked, there is a blue roof with a tan metal painted structure. We also included a stone wrap that goes over the actual poles. The ad alternate for this for both Miller Avenue and Wading River came in at a very reasonable price when we awarded the project. Doing that stone wrap around the poles was an option that we were able to afford with the available funding.
Just real quick, I mean, I know this
Sure.
is a rendering. Do they have gutters and, is this bench kind of from column to column, is that included as well?
Yes.
Do they have any type of like rain diversion?
There is no gutter system, no. For the Wading River outdoor learning environment, it's going to be inside of the southwest corner of the playground, or of the green space of the fields behind the back of the cafeteria. The playground's located on the opposite side of the campus. So from an instructional standpoint, we'd be able to take advantage of this quiet space here. And it also allowed us full access to the fields. So it did not impact if outside organizations use our fields, as well as the building level programs using the full field. For field day a week or so ago, the entire field had something going on. So by putting the outdoor learning environment in this section here, there's very easy access and very little to no disruption when students are outside and the children inside of these classrooms here.
I know this is a future conversation, but are you pulling pipe and path to these locations for power?
We are. Conduits that'll be placed at the time of this site work before the
You don't have a power source identified to
We
pull
don't.
from, yeah.
We don't.
Is the accessible walkway part of the funding?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will put the walkway in, we will do a cement pad, we will do the sheds, we will put this cement pad, we will also put the actual pavilion. As far as a future pollinating garden, future landscape garden, outdoor area there, that's going to be for future phases. The primary instructional space will be ready and available, which was the primary goal to utilize this funding.
Okay.
The Wading River color scheme, same pavilion as the Miller Avenue. However, it has different colors for the roof and undersides.
So one more question.
Sure.
I know we're focusing on the pavilion and the slab, but is the accessible path, is that part of this phase?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We have, in order to access all three learning environments at the middle school, Miller Avenue, Wading River, the minimum so that students could access them as instructional spaces has been included in our initial award. At Prodell, the greenhouse is located here. It's in this pie-shaped section. From the previous presentation, we have switched the orientation. Originally, the concrete area was going to be on the parking lot side for future opportunity we have chose to bring the concrete on the inside section, handing it out, so an enhanced area from a music production spot also. So outdoor music can take place with this particular layout, as opposed to when we had it laid out where the parking lot was behind it. This was deemed to be a better design for that type of use. Again, we have existing walkways here. We're just picking up a walkway to the learning space here, walkway here, and a connecting walkway here.
Are they all the same square footage, all the pavilions?
Yes,
Okay.
approximately 1,000
About 1,000.
square feet. Yes.
I know that maybe in the space to the east between the two buildings, I don't know which wings those are, but there were
Yep.
some drainage issues. Are we envisioning any
We
drainage issues
actually
here?
fixed the drainage
Fixed that.
issue. That is on a
Okay.
wing closer when you come into the building.
Right.
We had done the drainage project probably 2 years ago now. So unless if something new has surfaced, I am not aware of any drainage
Okay.
issues.
And with the addition to more hardened surfaces, they were, not anticipating any type of drainage concerns.
I don't anticipate anything that, unless if they find something when they begin digging.
And all of those concrete walkways have been redone already, right? Recently?
Yes.
Like within the last year or two?
2 years.
Yeah.
Given the connecting outdoor plaza to the pavilion, for this one, is it an option to get a gutter system, or should that be a consideration?
We had discussed, there was an email sent by one of the capital projects board liaisons about a gutter system. And the actual pavilion types are not part of a gutter design. They don't seem to be, the roof structure is just not conducive for it according to the manufacturer. So we did actually reach out to the manufacturer. We did ask, they are not really designed for that type of system.
I wonder if our architect will determine that connecting the two paths would then cause some sort of water runoff.
Well, there's always going to be a pitch for that cement that is under the pavilion,
Mhm.
pitching any type of resting or standing water outwards. So we don't anticipate these pavilions being used during a rain. So we don't anticipate students going out in the uncovered walkways, getting out to these spaces. So the main question is, how is the drainage when the water does actually puddle? Is it going to be sufficiently pitched? They are supposed to prepare the site to allow for the water runoff to pitch away from the learning area. That's how the site work is designed.
Is that outdoor plaza designed to be a continuous surface with pitch, or is it designed to be a tiered?
Continuous surface with pitch. It is just a flat cement.
Oh, okay. I had thought it was going to be some sort of tiered.
There's talk about a future phase
Okay.
to do something different. At this time, that isn't part of this initial project.
Okay.
You're talking an amphitheater type setup
Mhm.
that is not currently part of this initial awarded phase.
Okay.
What is the thought behind the water source? Are you thinking about science locations? There's a water source on that, the project highlights?
No, I don't think there is.
We wrote it on there.
Am I looking at the Purdell?
You have water source on
Yeah, on this, I don't know why you don't have that on
Oh,
yours,
that
but
last bullet?
project highlights, it says water source. I was wondering if you're considering putting in,
Right now, the primary water source that they're referring to relates to the greenhouse area, that there is water
okay,
in that instruction area that I do have coming off of the side of the building. There is water within the greenhouse. So if needed, we are putting a conduit so that I can bring future water
Oh.
in case there's a desire to put a wet lab or some. There was a consideration about putting a green, a roof for this
Mhm.
particular one, and possible the other side, a solar powered. So we are just putting the infrastructure in for a possible future water connection.
okay.
The green roof would absorb the
Yeah, these are more of your town pavilions that you see at like a park or a ball field. I think they kind of went away with some of those creative options that we first discussed. Maybe, I'm hopeful that the things around the pavilions will enhance the opportunities for the students.
We are very confident that as we continue to attach onto these hard typescape structures, that there will be plenty of opportunities to make them more lab station style, as opposed to the entire pavilion being the actual lab. The actual pavilion is where all of the students gather, and everything that we bring to that pavilion will be the enhanced labs, lab-type stations.
If I remember correctly, the idea behind these pavilions was to lay the foundation first, and I mean figuratively, the foundation for a space that could be creative, and then over time, build upon that original thought process and add to it. So maybe the water source is something that's later added on, things of that nature, correct?
Correct. We are trying to put the infrastructure under the earth so that I don't have to go back, we don't have to go back to do it a second time.
Yeah, but it's
So-
versatile enough to maybe modify in the future,
It
or
is
add, I
definitely.
should say,
I mean, we do-
augment, right, as
We
it
didn't-
gets used.
Correct. We didn't change anything on this pavilion except remove the image of that green roof and the solar panels, because there wasn't available funding to do those as part of the initial phase.
Yeah, I think the solar panels would be better off on the building roof itself anyway, so, you know.
Yeah.
But like
Well,
Mr.
there's
Lewis said,
there's a
you know, there was some
difference.
creative ideas there that they
There's
were
a
coming up
difference
with.
between utilizing solar panels in the educational setting than harvesting
That's
it
true.
on
Yeah.
the roof for electric.
That's true. Yeah, I guess from an educational standpoint, they could use it and demonstrate, right?
The
Yeah.
STEAM elective.
Okay.
Colors for Prodel, a dark blue roof and a gray underside. High school, a little bit different design. As opposed to building a pavilion, there is the outdoor learning space is going to be attached to the cafeteria. It's going to be right off, this is the cafeteria here. And a little bit better picture, just showing this is the final product, where you're going to have an outdoor eating space as well as an outdoor learning space. So for 4 to 5 periods a day, its primary function is going to be an expansion of the high school cafeteria, allowing, there's a recessed area here. You can see it, part of the pictures. There's different, within this one layout, there are different instructional spaces. So multiple classes, when it isn't being used from a lunch period standpoint, multiple classes are able to take advantage of this particular site, where if you were to look here, you have a learning environment in this section, learning environment in that section, learning environment. This type of a synthetic turf mound is going to allow for sitting directly on it. So whether it's going to be an art class, whether it's a reading class, whether it's a literature class, English, any class is going to have the option to be able to come out to this space. And it's right off the cafeteria, plenty points of access, whether you're coming out the cafeteria doors, whether you're coming out the side doors here.
Could I just offer some constructive criticism? I've done a lot of corporate outdoor spaces. The furniture has, I don't know if this is a rendering, or if this is the accurate depiction of the furniture, but it reminds me of those old McDonald's metal circular things with the tables and chairs all attached. Is this gonna, we know, what material is this?
We actually selected that. You are actually looking at a picture of the furniture. That furniture
Powder
that was
coated metal?
ordered. Say that again.
Is it like powder coated metal?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, one of the prime things here is when the building's empty, I cannot have the chairs wind up inside of the pot. So,
Yeah,
so
I
there are
understand that they
conscious
need to be
decisions
attached.
made. There was a conscious decision made to allow it to be a functional, but but yet not an attractive nuisance for this particular area. So we thought the color scheme was a solid scheme, picking off of the colors of the building, as well as very functional seating, as opposed to a seat with out of back. And the blue tables back in this area here, those are high top bar style tables, where in that particular area, the chairs do not have backs. When you are looking at the benches here, we do have every 2 seats, there is a handrail between to try to avoid people to lay down across the benches. We cannot forget the environment of our students, that we are trying to find a very delicate balance to be very functional, but not too attractive.
Glenn, those look like white birch or paper birch, right?
That's what they are currently depicted to be, yes.
Is that what we're putting in? Because we don't have that there now, do we?
That is what we are currently slated to put in. Going back to this original rendering here, there is 2 flowering plums and some paper white birches.
Ah,
They do require a little bit of water, and they're very confident that they're going to do well there.
It's a nice tree, I like it.
It's a very nice tree.
Love it.
Do a couple of the stations have ADA accessibility?
Yes.
Mr. Kerr, you're assuming this fall this will be done?
We are assuming that by the time, I'm going to say the end of November, when everything is delivered, everything is here, the sales, everything in this picture here has already been ordered. We have contracted for all of the site work, contracted for the artificial synthetic berm. Sales shades have been ordered, furniture has been ordered. At the June 7th meeting, I anticipate a resolution coming for board review for this doorway here. Again, the lead time is averaging 6 to 7 months for the finishing touches, what I call the tables, the chairs, the sales shades, etc. What should be done by September 1st, you should see all of the site work. The trees should be planted, the synthetic berm should be in, the fencing should be in. All of the site work should be finished before the students arrive September 1st.
Will there be Wi-Fi accessibility out there?
Yes, there's currently,
Reaches out there.
and there were additional wireless access points set up for outside.
With the space and facilities, I know we've talked about greenhouses at the high school. Where would you anticipate a greenhouse to go, and where does that stand?
Right here, there is a door where this brick pier is now.
Mhm.
There is already a door that was put there for connection to room A101, 102.
Okay.
And when this was designed, it was, the actual flagpole is right to the right of this picture here, right there.
Mhm.
It was designed to allow for a greenhouse to go in this section here. And back in this corner, which is when you're walking up the plaza for the high school, there is currently, between the technology class and the Long Island Sustainability class, Mr. Nohill and Mr. Bertucci, and one of the teacher's name, I apologize,
Mr. Willie, maybe, or?
no, the set designer, Jerry.
Mr. Caskey.
Mr. Caskey. They're all, thank you, I apologize. They're all, we have currently purchased material for them. They're actually building an outdoor garden area in this section here. That's going to be completed within the next couple of weeks. So the plan is to tie this whole area together as a complete outdoor learning environment. With regards to the status for a greenhouse, it is on the list. There has not been identified funding, and it'll be something that we can continually look at inside the years ahead, but right now there is not funding. I do want to say they've done a wonderful job making use of the middle school greenhouse with the help of Dr. Palicelli and the entire team. They have, the middle school greenhouse went from this to this. It's being used for everything. Every time that I go there, I cannot imagine what they would do with a greenhouse here. That's what they're doing with
I thought you were gonna say every time you go there, you get vegetables or something.
No, I just get completely excited. That was a COVID project. We finished that project in the heart of school being closed and finishing that project, and just to have it sit there for that time. But how quick Mr. Van, Dr. Palicelli created a program there that uses it, it's just great.
I know it's needless to say, but a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, I know we were doing some major construction with the water line through there, or drainage, storm drain.
Yes.
So are we pretty certain we know where everything is underground to the best of our ability? Or?
I am as certain as a concrete pipe that doesn't show up on anything could
Yeah.
be. But yes, we're very confident that we should not hit the same pipe twice.
At least the same one.
Very confident I should not hit the same pipe twice.
Okay.
I might hit a different one.
Yeah. But they normally would look first.
Right now, we aren't digging, the reason why we hit that pipe, we were putting a sanitary system in, so
Yeah.
I was well down between 10 and 12 feet. We aren't going down with the exception of this area
Okay.
here. I'm not going down, so we shouldn't find anything that we haven't already found. But
Just, one last question. Is the only point of access into this whole fenced-in area is just opposite?
Right
the
here.
back?
right there.
Do we feel we don't need a second means of egress, or in case of emergency in that area?
It is only a 36-inch tall fence. I don't think.
Doesn't mean anything.
The state education department does not require us to have a second means, and
Okay.
I don't think from a student safety standpoint, we should create a second means.
So again, I'm also envisioning that this being utilized after school for team dinners, for
They'd be able
art
to walk
shows,
down
so
the
they would have
hallway
to
here.
walk from the
That-
parking lot all the way around into
Yes.
there.
Because there isn't any intent to basically create this for outside use. The plan is cafeteria use. So they usually have for an outside after-school type event, whether it's a team party, a team celebration, a team gathering, they typically had them inside of the cafeteria
Yes.
pre-COVID. So now, as opposed to walking down here and going into the door here, they could walk here, make that right turn, go into pavilion, as well as, I'm sure they're gonna want access to the cafeteria in order to get to the bathrooms. So I don't see
So opening
this,
up there to like the sidewalk here doesn't really make much sense.
I don't see the need when they usually always want access to the building.
Mr. Curie, how much time do you think we'll get on the sales?
How much time do you think we'll get on the sales? From the manufacturer's specification sheet, 7 to 10 years. I have talked to a couple of colleagues that have installed them, and after their first year, they definitely said they will take them down for the winter. Some schools leave them up. The recommendation from the vendor is you can keep them up, but if it's not being used to protect it from the sun, there's no need to keep them up. So other than the visual effect of how they actually look when they're up, it probably would be beneficial to take them down for the winter months, meaning you would take them down probably right after around Thanksgiving, put them back up about March. The second we begin to start to really go out there to use it on a regular basis. Part of the choice of picking this type of furniture was even if it's a December day, a January day, or a February day, hopefully the snow melts quickly, but it can be used if that actual day is warm, if the weather allows for it. So we did not want to pick a solid style where the water will sit.
How are you envisioning treating the water in that sunken pit? Is there some type of drainage?
There is drainage supposedly built into that pit, whether it's going to be tied into one of my dry wells that are very close proximity, or they were adding an additional dry well. I do not know that answer. But I do know that there's drainage included in that recessed area.
Is the surface permeable pavers, or is it a concrete pad?
I want to tell you that it is a type of a permeable paver, but I'm not 100% certain. I apologize. gone back and forth with what the final design is. The picture reflects it as a 12 by 12 paver. I think maybe you had to know the answer. So I was going to get my friend
Oh,
over
it
to
does,
help.
yes. Didn't see that.
Would you be able to find that out?
I
Just,
will.
and maybe we can
I-
switch to a permeable paver if it's not?
I'm going to tell you, I'm 95% certain that it is a permeable paver, but I will get back to you with a firm answer. If it isn't, and it is a solid concrete slab, I've already awarded the project, I can request a change order for that.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
go
a-
to the space and facilities, but
Permeable paver is a totally different substructure. It
I'm,
has to be
I'm
that
curious
dr- I
about
mean,
like paving, like as, in terms of drainage,
Yeah, what
if
about-
it's gonna rain and if it's going to snow, how quickly is the melt gonna occur? The patio usage at Wading River seems to be, enhanced or utilized most effectively with that surface.
For the courtyard pavers?
Yeah,
The courtyard projects are done very, very different because the courtyards do not actually have any type of a dry well under it.
okay,
So what they wound up doing was excavating, say, 3 feet of soil, fill it in with 3 feet of, with 34 inches of gravel, put the pavers down, and then put gravel again between the actual pavers. So that was done specifically for our drainage issues that we had within those courtyards.
okay.
It stumped me on that one, Miss Anderson, I apologize.
It's all right, I would love to
100%
see
that
it
is a paver,
be used as
but I-
most as like as, to maximize the usage, and if we get heavy snowfall, that it doesn't just catch snow and that it would drain quicker. But,
Well, it is in full sun, so
Okay.
it is going to, that area there typically has a very quick melting. It's the further west side of our campus that takes the longer part, because the eastern side of our synthetic turf field melts very, very quickly, and this is the eastern side of our
oh, true, yeah.
parking lot area, so I'm very confident that whatever melting that we get from the sun in this particular area, you are going to get the most melting.
Okay, thank you.
Just a few more quick pictures.
You can always do electric snow, put this over that.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Next up, we have the 2022-2023 district schedules regarding start and end times by Mr. Meinster.
Hello again. So for the upcoming school year, we are looking at having some changes being made to our start and dismissal schedules related to several issues. Some of them are the extended contractual day and the adjustment to the schedules that we wanted to make in bringing the buildings in line with the new 9-period day schedule as well. So these are the times that we are proposing for next year that we are looking to have. So we are looking at Miller Avenue and Wading River shifting later by 20 minutes from their current start times. Right now, the building will start at 8:55 and have dismissal at 2:55. We would be looking to shift those by 20 minutes. This is very typical of most elementary schools, actually. And looking around the island, this is actually a very typical type of a time frame for an elementary building schedule. So we would have our students come in 20 minutes later, dismiss 20 minutes later. That would be the same shift, by the way, for all of the other programs throughout the day. So the ensemble times would also shift 20 minutes later in the morning before the start of the regular school day. And Same thing would be true of the extra help time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those would also shift forward by 20 minutes. At Prodell, as Mr. Van had presented earlier, we have the regular school day. The 8:02 reflects the beginning of advisory and the beginning of the regular school day for all students. But there would be on Tuesdays through Fridays, every morning from 7:40 to 8 o'clock, there would be extra help available for all students. All teachers would be present in their classrooms, ready to receive students any of those days, Tuesday through Friday. And then the 9-period day would conclude with dismissal at 2:30 p.m. And finally, the high school, there is no change to the high school schedule proposed for next year from what they currently are. That is the current hour, 7:20 for the start of the school day, period 1, and 2:10 dismissal at the end of period 9. Associated with those, here are some of the extracurricular and support schedules that would go along with those revised start and dismissal times for next year. Elementary extra help would, as I said, take place still on Tuesdays and Thursdays as it does right now. It would simply shift later by 20 minutes, so instead of 8:15 to 8:45, it would be 8:35 to 9:05. The elementary music ensembles, again, same thing, shifting a little later by the 20 minutes, 8:15 to 9:05, with the Wading River early bus arriving at 8:05. At the middle school, the extra help, 7:40 to 8 a.m., Tuesday to Friday. There would no longer be a middle school early bus run. That early bus run and all of our early bus runs have always been for the purpose of being able to transport students to ensembles that we were unable to include within the school day. The middle school late buses will run at 3:30 and 4:30. High school late buses at 3:15 and 5:15. The asterisk there just indicates the fact that we need to work with our bus vendor closely to coordinate the exact times for those two buses, as they are involving other bus routes and other buses. We do intend to share all of this in detail. Each building will get that information out to the parents well in advance of the start of the 22-23 school year, and as soon as we have everything locked down and finalized. That is the entire presentation. I would be more than happy to address questions. I'm sure you're very disappointed there aren't any more slides to go.
Just when you say in enough time, just when do you envision that? I know people plan work schedules, and as far as the later start to the elementary school, when do you envision getting that information out to the parents?
Before the end of the school year.
Okay, oh, great.
Oh, yeah, no, we're just basically looking to make sure everything is
So
finalized.
in the next few weeks?
Within, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do you anticipate having those final bus times when that initial communication goes out?
That would be probably the one piece that will not be
Okay.
clarified yet in order to be able to confirm for certain the 3:15 and the 3:30 buses.
Mm-hmm.
That has been an ongoing an issue with regard to the bus company and making sure that we're coordinating that. So we are still working on that. But as far as all of the rest of these schedules and making sure that everybody is aware of everything that is on these schedules, both this and this, the schedules of the buildings, that's the information. We will be getting that out as soon as possible and definitely prior to the conclusion of this school year. We want to make sure that people do have time to adjust their schedules and to know full well what they need to be ready for when school resumes in September.
For our vendor that provides before care, are they able to provide, to make the necessary adjustments?
We'll confirm that, but I anticipate that that should not be a problem.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Is that going to have to extend?
Sorry?
Will the morning care, was it usually like a set allotment of time, like an hour, hour and a half? Will they have to provide it even longer, potentially?
I will need to follow up with the vendor to make sure, but my assumption would be, because that's typically how they work it, is that they are based on the hours that they know that parents need to be available. So if they're starting at 7, then they would continue to start at 7. They would just have to extend the program and adjust their, I'm sure, price schedule accordingly. But I will follow up with that and get more information on that.
Maybe offsets in the PM. Maybe they're not there.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha.
Oh, right. And since they provide, is the vendor scope? North Shore Youth Council?
No, it's North Shore Youth Council that
Oh,
provides
okay.
before and after school care.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll follow up. I'll make sure that that answer and that information is out there, and certainly we'll make sure that that is a part of the parent
Oh,
notification.
great, thank you.
We'll get that locked down before we go out with that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Meinster.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our votes and resolutions. Mrs. Mahoney, can you please read the memos for the acceptance of the policies for first reading?
Yes. At the May 19, 2022 Policy Committee meeting, 6 policies were reviewed and recommended to be accepted for a first read. The policies discussed are as follows. Policy number 2120, School Board Elections. This policy would be replacing District Policy 1220, Board Members Nomination and Election. It was discussed that the district policy would be related to multiple policies in this particular series of NISBA policies being reviewed. This policy was recommended for adoption to replace our district policy as the NISBA policy is current and follows education law. There was also information added from our current policy regarding vacancy of a trustee seat and the outcome of the election. Number 2120.1, Candidates and Campaigning. This policy corresponds with District Policies 1220, Board Members Nomination and Election, and number 1230, Reporting of Expenditures and Contributions. It was recommended for adoption to replace our current policies as it covers all necessary information regarding candidates running for a board seat. In addition, it was recommended to add the portion about Meet the Candidates Night from our current policy. Number 2120.2, Voting Procedures. This policy corresponds with District Policies 1630, Legal Qualification of Voters at School District Meetings, and number 1640, Absentee Ballots. It was recommended for adoption to replace our current district policies as it is current and contains all of the relevant information pertaining to voting procedures. Policy number 2121, Board Member Qualifications. This policy corresponds with District Policy 1210, Board Member Qualifications. It was recommended for adoption to replace our current district policy as it is current and the district policy has not been updated since 2009. Number 2130, Board Member Resignation and Dismissal. This policy corresponds with District Policy 1240, Resignation and Dismissal. It was recommended to keep our current policy and renumber it to follow NISBA's numbering system as it has good information and can serve as a guideline to follow the duties of a board member. Number 2160, School District Officer and Employee Code of Ethics. This is a new policy recommended for adoption to replace this is a policy recommended for adoption to replace District Policy 6110, Code of Ethics for all district personnel. It was discussed that the NISBA policy covers all code of ethics required by municipal law. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept the policies for first reading? Megan, second Henry. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the Cpsc, CSC, and 504 meeting summary dated March 11th? Tom, second Henry. Any discussion or question? All in favor? 6-0. Can I get a motion to approve the summary for May 18th? Tom, second Megan. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Can I get a motion to approve the March 2022 Treasurer's Report? Tom, second Mike. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. We have 3 Board of Education resolutions. Is it okay to take these as a block? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve 251 through 253? Tom, second Megan. Any discussion or questions?
Yes, for 2122-252, I know we've been in the COVID model these last couple of years, but will we be moving back to the library for our meetings?
That's a good question.
Certainly something that we can consider, maybe a good topic for reorg, but going back to the library is certainly possible.
It would be nice to have the lights out of our eyes, right?
Well, we'd be back for any recognitions and
True.
celebrations. The library's kind of tight, so if we have, reports, we have recognitions of students, then we would come back to the auditorium, but the library should be available next year.
Well, that's a good point. We had, prior to COVID, we had not had the ongoing student recognitions and performances that you had suggested, Mike, a couple years ago. And I think that's been working out really nicely, that we've had our students come to just about the majority of our
Yeah.
meetings, right?
And maybe the work, I know we try to do working meeting, business meeting, or, maybe one of the meetings each week is, each month is at the library, and then maybe the other meeting where we have more of an attendance could be in the auditorium.
That's a good suggestion. All right, let's put that on the reorg agenda to discuss the possibility of alternating in that way. Maybe with a schedule of a potential schedule of student performances or presentations.
Ms. Anderson,
Mhm.
that calendar, and Mr. Lewis, the calendar says time and location are subject to change.
Oh, okay.
So the calendar is primarily for approval of the dates, because then the reorg meeting will be in that new calendar.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we're making a motion to move this, but thank you for
I just had a
clarifying.
quick question. Is there a significant difference in setup between the library and here with this sound system for them? Is this better or worse? I guess I'd be interested in knowing
Question.
what's more productive in terms of a setup.
Uh,
I'm not looking for an answer now. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
we'll
have an
definitely,
answer.
we'll
but-
we'll definitely get back to you
Yeah.
on that. Setups, but just
What's that?
briefly, setups
Yeah,
possible for
cooling.
both?
It's always freezing in here.
Okay, that's a good question, too. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. We have 47 curriculum and instruction resolutions, and that number reflects a vast majority of renewals for our current vendors or changes as such. Can I get a motion? Is it okay to take these as a block, or do we want to take any of these out? No?
I'd like you to take one out, Katie.
Sure.
21, 22, 300.
Say that number one more time.
21, 22-300.
300? Okay. Okay, so let's go, can I get a motion to approve 254 through 299? Jim, second Megan. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2122-300? Megan, second Mike. Any discussion or questions?
I know why, well, I'm assuming why Tom wants to call us out separately, but I think we're in a somewhat of a tough spot. I guess the district is not an ideal location, but then again, we're, I don't want to say we're gifted money, but I know we're trying to do our best to make it work for the community. So I think this is probably going to be a topic that we're going to be discussing quite often these next few months and into next year, because I think we're probably only going to see more money allocated for UPK, and I think we should probably really think long and hard on the best options for our students and to unite them under one program instead of having two separate programs run totally differently. So.
Yeah, I think my purpose of pulling it out is I think this requires further planning. As much as we want to take advantage of state money, I just think this is really quick to jump into a pilot program without knowing all the implications of traffic, security, students, the administration, the amount of money and time and resources that we're going to push toward this. To have 40 students in the building that's already crowded, I don't know. I don't see it.
I wish we could use the money this year to help set up
Right, to
a
plan it
model
out.
that works
Yeah.
instead of,
Right, on
I'm
the fly.
assuming we can only use the money for the pupil. We can't use the money to establish program that works.
I can appreciate that. I think we're looking at 1 year, and I think,
Well, it's 1 year, but then
It's never 1 year.
school works very slow. Like
We're-
the facilities is a long process, SED, I mean, we've all been through it.
yeah,
Some
no,
are
I
slower than
understand. I
others.
mean, I currently work in a school in which we have
Right.
a preschool.
1 year
that pushes
becomes
in.
3 years before you.
No,
can find
understood,
out.
but we're voting on 1 year just to have the preschool there for this year. And I do think that we have to get behind planning and looking forward, but the vote is for just this.
But you can't pull it back either. I mean,
Right. We
You
approved this.
certainly, I'm of the opinion that you just can't not give it to the community.
I agree, but what I'm saying is,
So
to
we'll
say we're
have to
doing it
see.
just this year, you're not gonna pull it back next year.
We're gonna do the very best we can.
Okay.
Yeah, but with $5,400, so that's what we're doing. With the program today, that's $5,400 plus $1,500 for an outside vendor. You can't tell me we could replicate that. I'm just saying,
I think,
we're approving something tonight to take it into the buildings. Basically, once this is out of the box, it's out of the box.
I think the approach that the administration's taking, though, is a sound one from the standpoint of we're letting professionals that currently do have that program in effect, right? We don't have UPK currently. So we get to let them work closely with our administrators in our building. We get to learn from, what works best to just potentially provide a better program next year, right? So I think that taking that approach rather than a wholehearted approach of trying to bring it in-house and do it, given the circumstances that we have with the way funding came about, I think it's probably a good approach to proceed along these lines. Had we had more time to plan, obviously, with the funding that came in, maybe we would have made different choices. But, the fact that we're getting this funding now, and then a month later we're getting additional funding, I think the administration did a good job trying to plan this out to where we are today. So I support
I
it.
agree.
Certainly, the time crunch was there, but I don't think it's fair to say that we don't know any of the items that you had mentioned, Mr. Sheridan. Our administration did an in-depth analysis with the time given, so it is, in terms of the implications, we're gonna have a look back, but best guesses and planning were certainly discussed in depth and made as we have in backup, as we have had in the presentation. And I just cannot reconcile the idea of not providing access to that funding for 40 families when their tax dollars are warranting a program like this that is accessible to those 40 students at a rate that meets the grant dollars that are available to us.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but the UPK program inside of our buildings in a 3 through 5 building that's not equipped for a UPK program today, that's exactly what we're doing. We're using 2 classroom spaces, we're retrofitting it to work. That's exactly what we're doing as a pilot. This is not a well-thought-out plan, in my opinion, and my vote will represent that, so, thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify to the community, certainly many neighboring districts offer classroom space. These particular classrooms are being retrofitted in those closets to have even bathrooms that are specific in size to preschool students. And K, not just 3-5, it's elementary building first of K through 5. What scope would provide to us is no different from the vast majority of what it provides to 27 other districts on Long Island. Any other discussion or question? Yeah.
Just one point of clarity, what's the cutoff date, Mr. Poole, for, I guess how do I phrase this?
The age or the cutoff date for the lottery?
No, for the response, where we're gonna know logistically how many students are gonna be housed, potentially if we move forward within the Wading River building.
I'm sorry.
The parents, I think. So you mean like when did the
Well,
parents?
I guess based on my earlier question, where we were talking about, we were you know, we don't really have enough time based on the fact that it's a pilot. We know that we can accommodate with 2 classrooms. We have the potential of 4. I guess my question is, at what point in time is kind of like our drop dead date where we have to know how many people we're going to have that are gonna be taking advantage of UPK?
Well, I
You
think-
know that.
Yeah,
I think it's
we
quick, but I
committed
think
to
we already approved the 35 going to say Anthems. That number is already approved. So we only have funding for 40.
No, well, I get that part of it, but I mean, that could potentially change, correct?
Well, it
We
can't
could-
change this year.
No.
So
It
the
can't
idea,
change for next year.
right,
Just
the
as
idea was,
Potentially the following year could change if we get more funding.
the
Mr.
idea
Poole's
would be to use
allocated,
those 2
yeah,
classrooms.
he's allocated 2 classrooms in the building, Jim, of the 4.
Right.
So there's 2 classrooms that he's identified.
This resolution is the.
No, I know.
So he won't expand the program. We're approving 40 more bodies to come in, 40 more students to come into the program, take it to 75. The district will take $405,000 from the proceeds of that program.
All right, my apologies.
The piece on the funding, though, it's not definitive. We could push this program off, correct? We could push this program into the future, knowing that we have 35 currently in the program. So the other option is to not accept the pilot and to push this in for planning and decide how to really launch a UPK program. That's the other option to do.
But do we
But
lose the funding
Current cost
if we
of
don't
$1,500 per
institute the full 74? Do we lose that funding?
No, after discussion with Office of Early Learning, the expansion grant is intended to be available, whether you use it to its fullest capacity this year, intended to be available next year.
The bottom line is, it would be to the detriment of 40 additional families within our school district. And the administration is saying to us, the impact to our current programming is negligible. So I think that that is the basis, at least for my full support of it, and the basis of their recommendation.
And mine is, I think they've underestimated that use.
Is it okay to vote?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, just real quick, I know we had a lot of conversations in the past, UPK. I just think I would like to invite the community to participate in these conversations in, next fall, once we start doing some long-term planning.
Definitely.
I think it's important, though, to, throughout the year, to get some feedback from the UPK, right, which I know the administration has told us that they would be doing. That gives parents, both new parents coming in and those that have actually gone through it that might have younger siblings, the opportunity to kind of provide that, feedback to us, and we can, to Mr. Sheridan's point, make better plans as we go forward, right?
That's a good thought, to
Again,
specifically invite
let's
those
not forget,
families.
We've got a set of professionals coming in that have done UPK before. I'm sure there's gonna be certain things that we're gonna learn that are gonna be to the our benefit if we choose to bring this completely into the district, so.
And moving forward, we'd have more notice of the funding that we're receiving close to this year. We didn't have that notice.
Okay to vote? All in favor? 4? Yes? And then decline, Tom? 1?
Did you say against or decline?
Opposed? Thank you. Opposed? 1? Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't count you. Are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining? Okay, so 4, 1, 1. We have 2 human resources resolutions. Is it okay to take these as a block?
We just have one.
Oh, I'm sorry. 1,
We voted.
thank you, okay. We have 2122-302. Can I get a motion? Mike, second. Henry, any discussion or question? All in favor? 6-0. We have 26 business and operations resolutions. Is it okay to take these as a block? Yep. Can I get a motion to approve 2122-303? Bear with me.
328.
328. Motion? Mike, second Jim. Any discussion or questions?
I have a question for 321. The subject matter says approval to establish the middle school natural history day club as an extracurricular classroom activity club, but I believe the content of the resolution is about establishing an account, not the club. Is that accurate?
It is both. There is the need to establish the club as well as the extra classroom activity account for this particular. We had just give me a half a second.
Well, it says here in the memo that there's a teacher already who is already the advisor of the club. So doesn't the club exist?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cura, the club does exist, except the club has not had fundraising capacities.
So we're establishing the account, not the
Yeah,
club. That's what I was clarifying.
they have a 9/11 project that they're starting to fundraise for, and they want to
Okay.
have the ability to do so now.
So I don't know if we need to change the subject matter of the resolution to identify that it's to establish an account, not to establish a club.
It approves the establishment of the National History Day Club in the Albert J. Middle School as an extra classroom activity club. When it was approved at the reorganization meeting, there wasn't an associated extra classroom activity club account associated with it. So this is joining the two of
Okay.
them together.
Any additional questions or discussion?
I just wanted a clarification on 21-22-305, the Cullen and Danowski External Auditor Services. I know that GASB has that new rule for leases. Is this one of, would this fall under one of their responsibilities for reporting on those leases, or does that fall on the internal auditor?
Reporting on the leases will be part of the external audit. We are in the process of reviewing an outside agency in order to perform the required calculations. According to the GASB language, it must be an independent third party in order to project a long-term lease value. We hope to have that in order within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay to vote, all in favor? 6-0. Can I get a motion to approve to vote on the personnel agenda? Tom, second Megan. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. We do not have any comments from residents. Any additional discussion from the board?
If I could just take a few moments. I think it was maybe late fall, I had a discussion here about potentially doing some additional fields. I think now's a good time to maybe even consider, I know there was, the issue with potentially not having enough time to establish a bond committee, to have the proper meetings as we did the last go-around. I was very much involved, so was Henry. Rob was the chairman at that bond committee. Going through, just sitting here tonight, I'll just go through them real quick. I'm aware that these probably are not identified in some of the capital accounts that we've had established, but I really think we should consider maybe in this upcoming May to put together a bond for vote. For example, at Miller Avenue, I think we really should think hard about UPK classrooms, as well as additional space for art and music, as well as a cafeteria. At Wading River, new exterior windows, potentially fan coil units, if not all replaced at the time. The middle school, single point of entry guard booth with paving the front parking lot, ceiling replacements throughout, and another review of the HVAC rooftop units with replacements. The high school, potential greenhouse, paving the entrance road into the complex, rise classrooms, again, ceiling replacements, new turf fields for varsity and JV baseball, a second turf behind the bleachers. I did notice in the spring we have some some sports that are practicing at 6, 7 o'clock at night. I don't know if that's out of, necessity or just because the single turf is being used. And again, security upgrades. I think we should do a full review of some of our security needs. I know we've done a great job over the last 5 or 6 years in improving our facilities, but I think some of the additional cameras, potential license plate readers at the guard booths, additional crash gates, and I believe all the exterior doors should have audible alarms and sensors. So I'm asking the board to consider establishing a bond committee. I'm sure Glenn has multiple items as well that were never taken care of from the last bond. I know we were at 100 million. We did 50 plus a lot of transfer to capital project work and the 2 capital accounts that we've created. But I really think we should look at the facilities, what our needs could be in the next 5 to 6 years. So I'd like the board to consider the establishment of the bond committee for this summer.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about all the work that's been done, and I know we were in the process of putting together that 5-year plan going forward, probably the timing is appropriate for us to consider those things, and, I would support that as well, trying to put together a committee, go through the pros and cons of some of these projects. Some probably have a higher priority than others, just like the first bond, so I'd be in approval of that as well.
Can you, I wasn't here at the time of the bond committee being established, can you, yeah, not really time for, like, what would be the next step to begin
So,
that sort of?
Ironically, how I got involved in the district was, there was an advertisement about establishing a bond committee. There was a little blurb in the newsletter or paper saying we're establishing, anyone wants to volunteer. We met in the library, and we met, maybe at first it was once a month to establish some of the needs, some of the wants, of the district. And then we toured each of the buildings, and you can jump in. I know you kind of entered
Yeah,
toward the end of the summer.
yeah,
But then we met and we kind of just went through a lot of these kind of wish list items. And again, Glenn had some of his. I know he wasn't involved in a lot of the meetings, different administration, but there was things that needed to get done. I think we took care of a lot of those with the last bond. And then there were things that we wanted to get done, and we had to find that balance.
And just to put it in perspective, right, I mean, it's been 6 years, I think, since we first, 2015, 16. So, we've got a significant, like half the cohorts, right, that are here now, well, give or take, right, siblings. But if you think about it, all the students that have gone, from kindergarten all the way through 6th grade at this point have benefited from a lot of that. So there's probably in the community parents that have come in and maybe questioning, hey, why aren't we doing this, why aren't we doing that with facilities? And it's probably a good educational moment to kind of talk about, where we're going as a district with facilities and what makes sense to do. So having that community outreach and that input from them, I thought was very productive as part of the bond committee. It really energized, that was I think the slogan back then, right, it was really energizing the community behind getting the facilities back to, a standard that we would be proud of, which, I think we really have accomplished that, but there's always a little bit more that can always be done to help support, the educational process, and a lot of that has to do with how students feel in their environment, and there's certainly things that we can do to improve it.
I didn't mention, because I added that but I would also like to finish and complete all the outdoor learning spaces. I know that we're looking to do those over years, but something happens, funding goes somewhere else. So if we can establish funding for each of those outdoor learning spaces to maximize them sooner than later, I think would be a positive as well.
Can you mention again what you said at Wading River, the thought, if I didn't catch that?
It'll be in the meeting minutes.
I just threw some, exterior windows. I know the windows.
Oh, the windows.
In front of the building were residential grade windows. Again, Henry could probably let me know. I don't know if we replace all the fan coil units.
Yeah,
Building, but-
I think in space and facilities, we talk about the approach and what makes sense. I think it takes a collective look at it and see how does that fit in also with our, budget over the next 5 years. Like I mentioned, I know that the administration's been putting together a 5-year plan to kind of foresee what they think, and I'd be interested in seeing that and how that rolls into a bond committee, you know.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Lewis, for putting together that list and bringing that thought. We meet again on June 7th, and so perhaps we can hear back from administration at that time or another upcoming meeting, just about your take on next steps and timing and such.
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I would like to, and maybe we can talk about it June 7th, but I'd like to get the rest of the board's opinion and thoughts on. It's something I think the board should decide to drive the conversation to administration, like this is what we envision, this is what we want to do. And then,
Sure.
So we can table it to June 7th, but I'd like to get the rest of the board's opinion on whether or not this is something that they would like to see through as well.
Well, I think we know that there's an energy performance contract coming off the books next year, right? And that represents a certain dollar value. So we know there's opportunity to take advantage of that toward expense side to do some capital projects. So I'd be on board with exploring what would be necessary to look over, absolutely. I'm good with that.
So I guess I want a little bit of clarification on space and facility. I thought that was the function of space and facility, to really come up with a punch list and then make recommendations from there.
Yeah, I mean, the Space and Facilities normally meets, right, to discuss the current budget, what we have, what we
Right.
think are doing. What the bond committee allowed was even more input from the community with regard to what they expect our facilities to look like. So I think it just broadens the conversation and allows more input from the community to give us input, really. I think that was, and when I think back to some of the parents that served on the committee with us, they had a pretty diverse background, so it provided good data points for us, I think going forward.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of, who knows the buildings the best, and I think that using our community experts in our community is always wonderful, but I'm just curious about the role of space and facilities.
Yes, if I remember, some of the parents had education backgrounds that don't serve on space and facilities, so, we got some of that. Also, some of the parents had, siblings that were in 3rd grade and others that were in high school, so you kind of got a pretty good perspective of, especially for some of the parents that were in the bond committee that didn't have that older experience of the children going through the district. It kind of provided aha moments a few times, so it provided, I think, a better level playing field across all the buildings, which is one of the things that I think historically was an issue with passing bonds many, many, many years ago, that really wasn't encountered when the 2016 bond came to a vote.
Yeah, I also think space and facilities is more, this is what we have, this is the funding we have, and these are the projects we can pick from, instead of kind of reversing it. These are the projects we want to do, this is how much we need to establish it or to accomplish that. So I think it's just a little, I know Glenn does a great job with space and facilities over the years, so I think maybe that's the difference between the two.
Mike, what would be you would go out to RFP to get a sense of what those costs would be, and then we'd come back to administration?
No, I think the last time BBS was involved with the committee. I know they had provided some budgets, and Roger Smith was heavily involved in getting the bond approved. So typically, BBS, since they're under contract, they would work with us in creating the bond scope and the estimates. And I'm not sure if we can utilize the owner's rep or the CM that we have to maybe validate some of those costs as an added service.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if Mr. Curie can provide some clarity on it, but I think the facility assessment, I forget what they're called, so I apologize. The building,
That's coming up this
right,
year.
those are coming up as well, so, that provides good input.
It does.
A little bit.
It's more of, this hardware doesn't work anymore. It doesn't give you.
It doesn't give you a full
future,
picture. I agree. It gives you a good picture of operational needs, but it's specific to building operation, as opposed to, again, you know, we have cafeterias now and other planning spaces that we didn't have then that wouldn't necessarily be caught in the facility assessment, so. But it's another data point, right?
It's important.
I think it's exciting and it's something to move forward with. The timing of it is my only concern. I think that we had in tonight's presentation by Mr. Van on the 9-period day, that was a 3-year process. COVID kind of put a lot of curriculum and instruction initiatives either on hold or in a modified format that have now come to either fruition or are now being reassessed or are upcoming. And so I would want to hear from administration about the logistics of this and in terms of our resources and time resources, and then just weigh it out in conjunction with our strategic plan, implementing the rest of the steps of our strategic plan, and the time and energy resources for implementing the curriculum and instruction. Not to pit it against each other, there are buildings and grounds certainly facilitate the program that we provide our students, but just to be mindful of just being able to get those done.
Just to point, you mentioned schedule. I think we started meeting over the summer, and we had a January vote, right? So that was, we started meeting in the summer. I think we agreed on a number, maybe, what was it, maybe like September, October, where we had a defined scope and number.
In December, yeah, because it was
And
January.
then we went out, the board had to adopt it, and then it went out to, to the public for a vote in January.
So you're thinking that in
Well, if we
doing
if
this
we
in
do this in May,
May,
we
gives
have
a
more time for
yeah.
outreach, more time for
Okay.
discussion, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So perhaps you can just give us some feedback to consider, and then we can, discuss again on the 7th. Any further discussion? No? Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session for collective bargaining negotiations? Megan, second Jim, all in favor? 6